Welcome back to Democracy Works. I'm Jenna Spinelli. This week we are talking about civic education. It's something that a lot of us look back on with a sense of nostalgia about our own time in school, or maybe things we watched as a kid, like Schoolhouse Rock or Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers. Anything that helped us learn what it means to be a good neighbor, a good citizen, a good participant in a democracy. All that is much harder these days thanks to social media and AI and the ways that school curricula have changed. But our guest this week, Judge Marjorie Rendell of the Rendell Center for Civics and Civic Engagement, has a lot of ideas about how to reimagine civic education for our current era. And she talks about some of the innovative things they're doing, like mock trials and read alouds, and even having students create graphic novels about civics. So there's a lot in this kind of a map that you can maybe grab onto and implement something in your community or your school and do your part to strengthen civic education as well. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Judge Marjorie Rendell. Midge Rendell, welcome to Democracy Works. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jenna. Delightful to be here.
So I'm very excited to talk with you about your work at the Rendell Center for Civics and Civic Engagement. But before we get into that, I wanted to maybe start by asking you about your own civic education. I know you grew up in the post-war era, not to date you by any means, but, a lot of people consider that to be a golden age of civic pride, civic participation, civic engagement. So what was that like for you in the school setting?
Yeah, we had civics when I was a youngster. I can remember it was almost like a catechism. It was a booklet. The three branches of government, how old does the president have to be? All of these things I learned as a child when I was 8 and 9 years old. And then in high school, I was active in civic activities. And it was really a part of who you were, how you grew in your community and your family. And we miss that, but it was really wonderful. And I think my generation votes a lot more than other generations because we did have that. But for the last, I'd say 5 decades or so, it's gone to the wayside.
Yeah. When do you think has it been, in your view, a gradual decline, or are there sort of inflection points along the way when you think things really changed?
Yeah, well, it was gradual, I'd say, the end of the 1990s, let's say. But then No Child Left Behind brought in a lot of requirements for math and literacy, and social studies really got pushed to the side because the teachers had to teach to the test. And if they wanted to do civics, they had to find time that wasn't necessarily there. So I think it was a difficult time. And to this day, I talk to superintendents and principals about making time, but it's not something that they feel comfortable pushing down into the classroom. The teachers are so challenged. So it's tough. We have to fight to find a way to get it into the classroom. And we've chosen to do it by and large through literacy, which is something that they are teaching, thank goodness.
Yeah. Say more about what you mean by that. How do you define literacy in this context?
Well, we are doing a lot of mock trials based upon works of literature. To be kind of basic, was Goldilocks guilty of criminal trespass when she entered in the home of the three bears? And other books of literature that the students are reading. So the teachers are coming to us for the mock trial to develop a better comprehension, to go deeper with the content and the understanding of the book. So we found our way into the classroom largely in that way. And we have another program called the Citizenship Challenge, where the students write a class essay on a topic. Our first one was, should the Constitution be changed so that the president need not be a natural-born citizen? And writing of an essay is good. The children are researching, using primary documents, and enhancing their knowledge of these things, but at the same time writing. So writing is important. So we found a way to get into the classroom without doing something that is a curriculum add-on, if you will. So we're having fun with it, and the teachers are welcoming what we're doing. When we first started out, we developed curriculum, but the teachers weren't about to pick it up because they're already teaching and they're not about to put something else in. So we had to kind of be creative to find something that would work.
Yeah, so let's take a step back, talk about the founding of the center, and maybe even before that, when you went back into the classroom as First Lady of
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, what did you see in comparing that to what we were talking about earlier with your own experience of civic education?
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to mention in the award ceremony this afternoon. Um, when I first became a judge, I supervised or oversaw a naturalization ceremony on the lawn behind Independence Hall. And I just looked out on the new citizens and I said to myself, look at the joy in their faces. They know that our country and our form of government provides the opportunity, the freedom. They left their countries to come here. And our natural born citizens really don't realize how
Mm,
amazing our country is. And it just inspired me to want to spread the word of how great our government is. I mean, the separation of powers, the thought that went into the formation of our government. I'm teaching a workshop next week at the Community College of Philadelphia. It's an adult civic workshop. And in preparation for that, I ordered the expanded
mm,
version of the Federalist
mm,
Papers. It is an inch thick, single space document with the most amazing, thought provoking essays
mm,
by Hamilton and Madison and Jay. And you think, my goodness, what brought our country to where it is at the thought of these people? And you read the Constitution, and it's an amazing document. So I really got inspired by the naturalization ceremony. And then when Ed was governor, I decided as First Lady, I was a federal judge at the time. I couldn't take up and any real causes, social causes or policy
mm,
matters. But, what's wrong with civics education?
mhm,
That was something that I really could do and that I really understood as a judge.
mm,
I worked with the Constitution day in and day out. So we formed the Pennsylvania Coalition for Representative Democracy when I was First Lady, and I went around the Commonwealth between 2003 and 2011 talking about it. What's interesting is I first had to make people realize it was important, and that was a challenge. But as we get closer to this era,
mm,
people are realizing it is important. So many aspects of our government people don't understand, and they don't know where to turn. So we've become a more popular resource
mhm,
than ever because that first issue of why is it important, people are getting it. We formed the Rendell Center in 2014 to embark upon, educating the
mm,
next generation of citizens, and we've been doing it for 11 years now, and really very pleased. The difficulty is in having impact, in spreading the word.
mhm,
There's so much fight for people's time,
mhm,
and people don't know where to turn. So even today, we were asking students if they had heard about the Rendell Center, and they hadn't. We don't we don't market or whatever. We depend upon the word of mouth. But when we can get people's attention, it's popular, and we are being promoted by the Annenberg Public
mhm,
Policy Center. We're a partner
mhm.
of theirs, so we get the word out in that way. But it's been a great journey.
Yeah. Well, and on that point about fighting for people's attention, you cite also in your book there have been several reports that have come out, sort of large scale reports about the state of civics
Yeah,
education, how it's declining. We've talked about them on the show. We had one of the co-authors of the Educating for American Democracy
right.
report on
Mhm.
several years ago, and it's an easy case to make in the world of ideas that we in the McCourtney Institute operate in. I'm sure the Rendell Center would say that in some ways. But to the rest of the world
Yeah,
out there, like, how do you make this seem like it's not just an ivory tower issue?
yeah. I think people are seeing it more in their day to day lives. Knowing about their government, not knowing who has what powers. People are not sure. Does the president have this power? Does Congress have this power? Is Congress doing their job? So I think people are more inquisitive about it, and I think it's affecting their daily lives a little more than it used to. So I think it's not quite the ivory tower that it
Mhm.
was when McCourtney and we started, a dozen years ago. But thank God we did. Just look at the difference that McCourtney has made, the
Mm,
people they have brought forward
mm,
to
mhm.
showcase. It's fascinating, and but it is a fight. It is a fight for the public's attention, for sure.
Yeah. And also too, the other thing that I come up against when I think about this is so much of it is you can conjure Horace Mann and John Dewey and all these thinkers from 100 years ago. And so how do you, and even thinking about the experience that you had, like how do you prevent it from becoming a nostalgia trap, or just like
Yeah.
we're trying to reclaim something that once was, no matter how far back you want to take
Yeah.
it?
But I think it's important to realize what once was. I mean, part of the public school system in our country was founded so that people could learn to be citizens and learn about their government. That was like a number one reason that Dewey cited. And we shouldn't lose sight of that fact. It may be nostalgic, but we need to bring it to
Mm-hmm.
the front burner. Um, but I think there's such a lack of knowledge, such a basic lack. Actually, as part of this workshop next week, I'm giving the students, they're adults. I'd say the average age is probably around 50. We'll probably have 40 in the class. And as they come in, I'm giving them a copy of the Declaration and Constitution, a booklet. And then I'm giving each one of them an index card with one of the powers set forth in
Mm-hmm.
the Constitution, the treaty power, declare war, uh, coin money,
Mm-hmm.
uh, have a navy, etc. And I'm putting sections up on the blackboard and having them come up and figure out which branch of
Mm-hmm.
government has this power. And they don't know, but when you see it, it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to start with the basics and make everyday people realize, oh, we really don't know. We
Yeah.
really don't know. And interestingly, when we gave this workshop before, the students wanted more reading material. They wanted to be able on their own to read
Mm-hmm.
about it. So I'm actually getting every student a copy of Sandra Day O'Connor's book, The Majesty of the Law, which has a lot of information about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the formation of state and federal courts, a lot of influential Americans, presidents and judges. And it's just a good basic layman's primer, if you will. But the students wanted to know. They wanted more,
Hmm.
which is a good sign.
I was intrigued to hear you say both now and earlier today when you were visiting with some Penn State classes about the read alouds and bringing these different figures into the classroom. And I mean, certainly there's what they're gaining from the books and the stories that they're reading, but I think there's also some other benefits, just because students might not have ever seen a judge or a firefighter or a police officer or any of these other folks.
It's true. It's true. And I have some testimonials from the teachers. When a veteran comes in on Veterans Day and reads a book and talks to the children about their service, it really means something. When we have people like that come into the classroom and they don't have to be there, they're volunteering to teach the kids, I think it makes a huge impact. And, I like to tell people that, at the Rendell Center, we use a lot of lawyers and judges, and they love it. They want the opportunity to come in on Constitution Day and educate. And you can call the County Bar Association or the Pennsylvania Bar Association or call a court, state court or federal court, and say, I'd like a judge or a lawyer to come into my classroom on Bill of Rights Day or on Constitution Day, Veterans Day. And we're only, no one's going to turn you down. They're going to be anxious to come in. And that's what, in our court, we have a courts and community committee to kind of get the court out into the community and bring the community
Mhm.
into the court. And I think at the Rendell Center, we're really doing that and pushing that.
Mhm.
And I hope teachers get the message. It's tough to get the attention of teachers. They're so
Mhm.
busy and they're so burdened with so many things they have to do that for them to think, gee, I can get a lawyer to come in, but that's the message that we're trying to send and that the Rendell Center sends, especially with these read alouds. We're
Mhm.
getting judges, lawyers, people into the classroom.
Yeah. And, as things have become more and more politicized in the schools, have you seen an increase in hesitancy or the thought of, I don't even want to touch anything that even smells of
Yeah.
politics in my classroom?
Yeah, there is some hesitance on the part of some uh, teachers to do that for fear that who knows somebody
Mhm.
might take it wrong, or even though what we're doing is innocent, there is that risk. But by and large, the teachers who have us in are understanding that we know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to keep it very factual. And it hasn't yet become a real problem. But you can imagine that teaching civics today isn't easy. And that's why get the lawyer, get the judge to come in. They know the facts. They know what the Constitution says. They don't have to say what people think. So having someone in there who deals with the Constitution day in, day out makes it easier for the teacher to do, I think.
Yeah, and there's also something too. I think I can envision a scenario where an angry parent would call up a teacher to complain about a classroom activity, but calling a judge, calling a lawyer, that seems much more intimidating than calling up your kid's teacher in some
And if
way.
you want to call the teacher for what the judge said, the teacher can say, "I'm sorry, but the judge said that, and I wasn't about to contradict her." So
Yeah.
it gives you an excuse, I think.
Yeah.
But most of what we teach is factual. This is what the Constitution
Mm-hmm.
says, or this book, and we try to have books that are, fairly bland, but teach a civic lesson, and there can be discussion points that aren't lightning rods for political views, but we try to be careful. We know it can be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and on that point about the books, how do you think about civic and civic education in the broader culture? Like, Schoolhouse Rock was before my time, but I know it was influential for some. I certainly watched a lot of Mr. Rogers growing up. I think he modeled what being a small d democratic citizen was like. But today, I don't have kids, but I understand that a lot of what they consume is called brain rot, right? Or that's what they call the content that they watch on TikTok or YouTube or what have you. So it seems like that's also an uphill battle. And I wonder if you think at all about how whether it's your work or the work of partners can sort of get in that cultural space.
Yeah. Well, Sandra Day O'Connor started a project called iCivics many years ago, and it's games. And kids can go on the website and play games that have civic content and information about the judiciary, et cetera. So that's really terrific. And for the 250th, we at the Rendell Center are putting together mock trials based on history. Should Betsy Ross be persecuted or prosecuted, I should say, for treason, for making the American flag that was carried on the battlefield, et cetera, et cetera. And we're finding that the use of AI to do depictions of characters that we want to put into these mock trials is really kind of cool. We have stories, but we can also put a picture of the prosecutor. Just it's not really the prosecutor, but you have a picture. And for AI, make a picture of Betsy Ross being on the witness stand. Okay, there we go. Do that. And you can come up with these graphics. And we're thinking of doing some graphic novels that would be a little more appealing to the younger generation. So I think with the advent of AI, I mean, the content is our content. We're not letting AI develop the content, but with the depictions and just making it interesting, there's a lot to be done there. But that is a challenge. I mean, as you walk through, sure, the college campus, everybody's on their phone. Well, we need to get something on the phone that they want to watch, that they want to see. And I'm not sure if we're totally there, but I think the graphic novels is a start.
Yeah, and I know that the Citizenship Challenge is another program that it kind of gets students engaged in a different way. Tell me about that.
It's an essay project that's open to 4th and 5th grade classes. It's a class essay. The idea is for them to work as a team. We pose an issue. This year, it is whether the colonists were guilty of treason in fomenting the revolution, because it's very timely for the 250th anniversary of the Declaration. And the students will take a side, yes or no, research it, look at Common Sense by Thomas Paine, look at what's going on at the time, look at whether was this justified or not. And they work as a class. They come up with an essay. We usually get over 200 class essays all across the Commonwealth, Johnstown, Pittsburgh, all across. The top 10 are selected and go to the National Constitution Center, where they perform a skit about their essay. And the first one we had was whether did I mention this Constitution needs to be amended so that the president doesn't need to be a natural born citizen. Well, at the end of their skit, they played Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, so which was very topical. So the kids are very creative, and we just love it. The governor, Ed Rendell, just absolutely loves it. The parents come, the teachers come. I invariably am crying by the end because the kids are so excited. And last year, the Philly Fanatic came and helped us present the checks. We give $1,000 and $500 to the top winners, and they get so very excited. And they're excited about learning about the Constitution. What could be better than that?
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you would have at least a running shot of getting Springsteen to come. Now, maybe the students wouldn't actually know who he was, but some of the teachers and the parents might be excited
could
about
be. I mean,
that.
we thought we were great getting the Fanatic, but maybe get or Bon Jovi or somebody.
Yeah.
Bon Jovi's a big Ben Franklin fan. Maybe we can get John Bon Jovi to come. But it's really fun, and they don't forget it. We got a letter from a 9th grade student talking about the impact that it had on him. He was talking about how this non-sports competition brought him, a skill set that he'd never used before. He had to answer after they do the skits. They answer questions from the judges, and they're standing on their feet answering a question about their essay, and they have to think on their feet. He said, "Nobody ever asked me what I thought about something before." So it's making an impact. It really is.
Yeah. And that reminds me, hearing about the 9th grader, we did not talk about the Rendell Center focuses on younger learners, elementary and middle school students.
We do. That's our main focus because we like to start there. We think we can have the most impact. They're learning who they are, where they fit in their families. By the time they're in 8th grade, they're distracted. They have so many other things on their mind. So we just like to catch them where they really want to raise their hand and tell you what they're thinking. We do high school as well. We have mock Supreme Court arguments where the students are pretending they're lawyers arguing a case before the Supreme Court. And usually that's more middle school or high school. So we don't turn them away. But I must say our focus on what we do is the younger students, where we think we can. We're sure that when we touch those kids, they're going to vote. They're going to think for themselves. They're going to express their opinion because they learned that it's valuable to do that at an early age.
So now we're coming to the end of our time here, but I do just want to ask you, since I do have a federal judge here, just if you could just talk a bit about the role that judges, especially federal judges, are playing in our democracy right now, and how that maybe has evolved. I mean, to my mind, there's never been as many clashes between the judiciary and the executive as there are right now, but you're the expert here.
Well, the Constitution has a separation of powers. There are certain powers delegated to the president, certain powers delegated to Congress. There's certain statutes that control where money is supposed to go. And to the extent that a plaintiff believes that this hasn't been, we haven't been abiding by that, they bring an action in federal court saying this violates the Constitution, or this violates a statute, or this is not a power that somebody has. And the courts are deciding these issues. They're hearing argument, they're taking evidence, and they're coming up with reasoned conclusions. And a lot of them have been declaring a lot of executive orders to violate the Constitution or to violate congressionally authorized statute or a grant. But, the justice system works slowly, and they have to wend their way through the courts. Several of them are in front of appeals courts right now. None of them that I know of are before my court, maybe in front of a panel that I don't know about. But it takes time. And ultimately, the appeals courts will or won't agree. I think in one instance, the First Circuit did agree with the district court in Massachusetts, so it'll wend its way to the Supreme Court. And pending these, the Supreme Court has stayed a number of them, which, I won't comment on whether I think that was, proper or not. But it's a challenging time. But our judicial system is not the instant situation that an executive order is. An executive order gets signed. Boom. That's the law, supposedly. It's supposed to be the law. And then someone brings a case in court, and it gets argued, and there's evidence, and it takes time. So we don't know. We're only several months into the administration that's making more use of executive orders. I mean, no doubt about it, executive orders have been the norm. Uh, Congressional action has not been.
Yeah.
Executive orders have been for, 20 years perhaps, and, both political parties. But they're instantaneous. And when someone challenges them, it's like a slog. It takes time. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But I think the judges are doing their role. We take evidence. The trial court takes evidence, and someone asks for an injunction. There are standards for the injunction. The judge decides whether it meets those standards. Appeals court might disagree, but injunctions are being entered because the district courts have said by doing what judges do. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago about the insubordination of judges. And to my mind, I think the district courts have been doing their job. I think there was one district court judge which I think entered an order after the Supreme Court had entered a stay. I think it was out of frustration. But, I see what judges do. When I went on the bench, I couldn't believe how faithfully judges want to get it right. And to this day. And I have a court on which I think we're equally divided politically, if you would say politically. But we all adhere to precedent. We all adhere to the precedent that has been handed down. And if that precedent dictates X or Y, that's what we follow. Supreme Court's different. They might say precedent doesn't apply. They get the puzzles. They get the cases that might be out on the edges. But very much, and Sam Alito said when he was being confirmed for Supreme Court that 96% of the cases he heard when he was on the Court of Appeals were controlled by precedent. So I don't think our district courts are doing anything other than what they always do. What they always do.
Yeah. Do you think that there's in the press you hear that there's certain cases are being brought up at the time they're brought up because they want to get them in front of the Supreme Court, whoever is bringing the case, whether it's to some kind of controversial issue like religious freedom or reproductive rights or all those kinds of things. But I guess I wonder, like in some ways, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but appeals courts are like the last line of defense before something gets to the Supreme Court. So do you feel like there's more pressure now with these cases that are really like overtly that's the goal, is to get this bigger issue in front of the Supreme Court?
I don't know the motivation of people coming to the courts. I think we are seeing more current event type things coming into the courts because there's a lot of conversation and there's a lot of discussion. I mean, as well as I do, there's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of people with a lot of different views. And if they have different views and they want somebody to say something about it, they'll come into the court. So I do think the litigiousness of current events in our courts is much greater than it was a dozen years. I mean, there's no doubt about it. People have strong feelings, and those strong feelings lead to, I want my rights declared. So the place you declare them is come into court. So I think you do see it. I don't know the motives of getting before the Supreme Court or such, but it's as it has always been that somebody wants a recognition of their right. It's just people feel very, very strongly about their rights these days.
And I wonder if going all the way back to where we started and civic education, you think that there's like people feel more strongly about these things because in some ways they don't have as much of a solid understanding of what those rights are. Like you go on feelings when you don't have facts in some ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was alive during the era of, Reagan era and Bush and Clinton. And we were a little more ho-hum about our rights back then. When somebody says it, so it must be so. We didn't have we weren't pitted against each other in the same ways. I mean, look at the Senate. They used to work across the aisle and get things done. And government in our Congress was governing. It was passing laws. And I mean, you look at the great legislation of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the crime bill of Clinton and the, Johnson's, civil rights, and things got done in Congress. And people, they elected their representatives to do that, to go and govern. We're in a different climate now. We really are.
And do you see, like, or I guess, what role do you see civic education playing in perhaps changing that climate?
Well, if we could get the facts out through civics education, I think there would be less litigation because I think people would know who has what power. People would read and understand. People would see there's a statute that says X and that does or doesn't apply. I mean, a lot of the litigation is being brought over matters that district courts have found fairly clearly it either does or doesn't fit.
Mhm.
It either does or doesn't fit under the Constitution, or does or doesn't fit under a treaty or a statute, because it's pretty clear. So I think if we had more civics education, then I think knowledge would overcome a lot of the things that we see in the
Mhm.
courts. People would understand. Well, I'm not going to bring that suit because I see this, and that means I'm probably going to lose,
Mhm.
or maybe I'm going to win. But I think knowledge would correct a
Yeah.
lot of what we see that seems to be emotion. And I'm not saying on one side or the other.
Mhm.
There's an emotion on both sides, and if they were to just sit back and relax and read a little bit more,
Mhm.
they might say, "Oh, well, I'm not happy it is that way, but if I want to change, I better go to Congress."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's more of a personal view, but I do think that knowledge of the Constitution is where you start, really start.
Well, I think that is a fantastic place to end. We'll link to the Rendell Center and everything that you all are doing in the show notes. And Judge
Yeah.
Rendell, thanks for your time today.
Well, thank you for the McCourtney Center for Democracy at Penn State. It's doing great work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jenna and Judge Rendell, for a really great discussion about the work that Midge is doing with her center. And one of the things, there are many things that stood out to me about the conversation. One of the things that, again, as an educator, we want to meet people where they are. And, there is a concerted effort to meet both adults and children where they are. I mean, I often show my own students YouTube videos where average citizens are asked questions about that are from the U.S. citizenship test. Um, and people cannot answer these questions. And, of course, there's a little comedy laced in. People give kind of off the wall answers. But the fact of the matter is that it's not okay. It's not okay.
No, that's
Um,
funny.
so, for folks, for them to think through, okay, well, how can we reach people? In what ways? Like, where are they? We know that people are busy. We know that teachers already have, a bunch of things that they already have to do, and to try to think creatively about how to get in where you can fit in, build a strong foundation for adults, while at the same time, uh, finding adults, where they are, but then also that the principles that are taught for both adults and children are different. The medium and the mode might be different. And so I really just appreciate that and applaud that effort to encapsulate touch so many audiences.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually think that it's another thing that is true and that risks a sense of nostalgia is that adults, a generation or two ago, had a stronger sense of responsibility for how children were raised and how we had we adults had a sense of responsibility, how we were modeling the right behavior for them. And again, I don't want to go back necessarily, but I don't want to ignore the importance of that and how it matters for young people. And the other thing is just this, I mean, community is a hard nut right now. And when you bring adults and children who don't necessarily know each other, you're building that community. You're building that sense of in some meaningful, abstract way. We are all in this together, and we don't do that enough.
Um, I'm sorry, Chris. There's something that you said that stood out to me, and I'm like, Is this a childhood trauma?" I don't think that that's true all the way. That there is, an era of time when parents modeled certain kinds of behavior. Because most of us, I think, from my generation up, were let loose on. You get home from school and you get on your bike and you show back up in the evenings. Now, I want to just put that aside. I do think, though, that there was a difference in orientation around the questions that were being answered in public schools. I think that we could agree on, and we can see that traced in curriculums over time and what's there and what's not there. And the fact that um, civics is being kind of sidelined as if it were mutually exclusive from literacy, from
Right.
reading, and even from math,
Or from history,
or
obviously.
and certainly from history.
But the Rendell Center came into this, saw this reality, and figured out how to deal with it. Instead of just, you know, um, clutching their pearls or wringing their hands about the fact that civics wasn't part of the curriculum, they said, well, literacy is part of the curriculum. Let's go there. Let's work there to invest civics. And the moment where I thought, yeah, this could be the Brown Medal winner was when I read that they used Lily's purple plastic purse as a means of investing civics and moral dialogue into a fourth grader's conversation or whatever it was, maybe first grade. I had read that book 100 times, right? And I never thought about that. I mean, with my own kids. I guess I should say that. But um, once I thought about that, I'm like, that is a great idea. That's a great idea. And by moving into what is already there, I think the Rendell Center has made a really brilliant and effective strategic decision.
One of the other pedagogical strategies that I think is likely to be effective is what we call embodied learning. And that's when you step into the shoes of somebody else, or you role play, or um, you use your body to play out particular scenarios. You get into it. And so, they talk about, doing mock trials and, uh, that kind of stuff where you have to, there's like an empathy building there, right? Because you might be in a position of a person that you actually do not agree with. And playing that out and thinking through, well, why would they do it this way is something that most people don't do. And it's not that often of an opportunity that you get prompted to do that. And so, I think that is a, a practice that builds skills, but also says, like, what's the best opposing argument, right? And really engaging into it instead of this kind of gotcha debate that we find ourselves that we see a lot of elites modeling instead of, true engagement on the ideas. I think the other kind of way that we have experiential learning and embodied learning for adults is doing democracy, right? When you get your jury summons, instead of like lamenting it, you go for it, because people who do that often feel like, oh, I have a better understanding of how the system works. And so these opportunities for young folks and children to try on these things early and to learn the skills necessary to discern, to compare, to evaluate the information that's being put in front of them, to have civil discourse with someone who disagrees with them. or to evaluate whether that person is out of the boundaries of, potentially out of the boundaries uh, of productive dialogue. I think that's maybe a way of saying that. I mean, I think that's a very nuanced skill. Um, but these are the kinds of things that are needed, especially now, more than any other time, I think. Um, the work that is being done around here, given these many landmines, barriers um, that folks have to navigate.
And, in a world where not only are all those skills of civic disagreement almost absent in our society now, but AI is looming. Fake videos are looming if they're not already here. How do we deal with this?
Mm-hmm.
We're not thinking about this. We're not creative. But if we are going to sustain our democracy, if we're going to sustain ourselves as a well-ordered democracy, we simply have no choice. And we have to accept that these are goals that we need to take seriously. And I think that's why the Rendell Center is such a good thing for us to be aware of. And the book will be out in about a month, and I encourage everybody to get it and read it. The brown metal books are always short, but it does give you a sense of not just affirming those goals, but also thinking strategically about how we engage them, how we seek to achieve them in the age in which we find ourselves. So, for democracy, I'm Chris Beam.
I'm Candace Watt Smith. Thanks for listening.